We find no grounds to support your claim of defamation and in the circumstances will not be issuing an apology. Any legal proceedings which you may care to issue will be fully and vigorously defended. This is the outrageous and arrogant response from Philip Burke, the manager of CRCFM, who stands over a government-sponsored pro-immigration podcast that seriously defamed my festival, Misha Era, and by virtue of that, me, given that I'm the organiser and everybody locally knows that it was my festival. If this podcast being government-sponsored wasn't bad enough.
This programme has been funded by Department of Justice, Home Affairs and Migration.
It also features an asylum seeker and a government-paid employee peddling inflammatory lies. Lies that could lead to me or others that I care about being hurt. Isn't it ironic? Creating a fake story about hateful rhetoric by fabricating hateful rhetoric designed to destroy someone's reputation and even cause them harm. At the end of this video, I'll tell you how exactly Philip justifies referring to Misha Era as a far-right festival after introducing their podcast Amplify with the tagline,
"Giving voice against racism."
First, let me play you a bit of the podcast.
The second edition of Amplify, Community Link Officer Caroline Brennan, sporting legend Cora Staunton, Minister of State Alan Dillon, and the American activist Dorothy Burt discuss how communities are making racism indefensible.
You're listening to Amplify, Giving Voice Against Racism. I am Mikhail Manasseh. Today, we are looking at community response against racism. The moments when ordinary people decide that hatred won't set the agenda. We will hear from a community in Mayo that stood up to a far-right festival. Live in studio with me, Caroline Brennan, a community link worker with Southwest Mayo Development Company, who organized the response Mayo Welcomes to help behind the Castle Bar rally that gathered over 1,000 signatures against a far-right event. Caroline, last year, a far-right group announced a festival in Castle Bar. Instead of ignoring it, the community mobilized a petition, a rally, clear statement. Walk us through what happened. What was the moment you and others said, we have to respond?
Yeah, so that event was in the Ivy Hotel at the end of last summer. We put together a petition. It was organised initially by Mayo Against Racism. I helped share it with a lot of my colleagues and community groups that I work with. But unfortunately, the Ivy Hotel decided to go ahead with it anyway. So because we knew it wasn't being cancelled, I'm part of the steering group of Mayo Welcomes, which is another community group that's for everybody living in Mayo to show inclusion and solidarity with all our new arrivals. The same day that the event was happening in the Ivy Hotel, there was a Palestinian Solidarity March at the same time, which is organised separately. So what we did was we invited the group Mayo Welcomes and any of our colleagues and friends to join the march for Palestine. So it wasn't a protest outside the hotel, because at the end of the day, we all have families and we didn't want to be targeted ourselves by far-right groups because a lot of them can be violent.
On hearing all this, I sent the manager, Mr. Burke, a letter informing him that Misha Era is a celebration of Irish music and culture and did not promote or endorse any sort of racist or extremist views. We had people from many different countries at the event and staff with 8 different nationalities working in the hotel on the day of the event. I requested an apology and a retraction from Mr. Burke. That's all. Very fair, I think. And here is his full response to that letter. Dear Mr. Kerr, we are in receipt of your letter of complaint dated the 3rd of April 2026 and contents of which have been carefully considered by us. The station has comprehensively reviewed the broadcast in question, relevant evidence available to us at the time of broadcast, and the issues raised by you. Having done so, we find no grounds to support your claim of defamation, and in the circumstances will not be issuing an apology. The description of the Misha Era Festival as a far-right festival was based on the following. 1. A published article in Hot Press magazine that used the same description. A community petition signed by approximately 1,500 local people characterising the festival as far-right. Your own public record of activism, and finally, your role as publisher of the Irish Inquiry. Taking all the above into consideration, we as a radio station are satisfied that we have a very strong defence in accordance with the relevant provisions of the Defamation Act 2009. That being the case, please note that any legal proceedings which you may care to issue will be fully and vigorously defended. However, as a gesture of goodwill, we now offer you a right of reply to present your perspective on the relevant broadcast, and in this regard, please note there are 3 programmes left to be broadcast in this series on the following dates: Friday the 29th of May, Friday the 26th of June, Friday 31st of July. We will fully facilitate you whichever date you choose. We await hearing from you. Yours sincerely, Philip Burke, Manager, CRC-FM. Notice that he makes no reference to what their podcast is all about and what this particular episode is all about.
You're listening to Amplify, giving voice against racism. I am Mikhail Manasseh. Today, we are looking at community response against racism. The moments when ordinary people decide that hatred won't set the agenda. We will hear from a community in Mayo that stood up to a far-right festival.
Mr. Burke doesn't address any of that in his letter to me. He simply tries to justify calling Mise Éire a far-right festival based on the following. Number 1, a published article in Hot Press magazine that used the same description. Regarding your first point, Philip, I would just like to say that repeating or republishing a defamatory statement makes the repeater liable as if they originated it. Attributing it to an original source, in this case Hot Press, does not absolve responsibility. So I don't know exactly how Philip became a manager of a radio station, because when I was doing radio broadcasting in Ballyfermot 25 years ago, we learnt that within the first couple of months. In his second point, he mentions a petition signed by approximately 1,500 local people. Philip, I'm afraid Irish defamation law does not recognise many people believe it, or it was a petition defence. The core requirement remains the same. As a defendant in a defamation case, you must prove that statements are substantially true. The numbers of signatories is irrelevant to proving truth. And by the way, it was your government-sponsored guest on the podcast, Ms. Brennan, who said, "We put together a petition. It was organised by Mayo Against Racism." Now, Mayo Against Racism, by the way, was founded by people before profit thug Joe Daly. Joe Daly, the same Joe Daly who tried to run me over in his car only a couple of weeks ago and verbally abused my girlfriend Suzanne on the street when she was out with her little daughter. Anyway, his third point, he goes on to say, your own public record of activism. Now, this is very vague. My activism goes back to 2010 and covers things like water quality, banking fraud, government overreach, and immigration policy. So, I'd be very interested to see what details Philip might provide in court to back up that statement. And finally, the fourth reason he gives to justify calling Mise Éire a far-right festival on his podcast, which promotes itself as giving voice against racism, is your role as publisher of the Irish Inquiry. Again, let's see what he brings forward to back that up if we end up in court. The Irish Inquiry has nearly 250,000 subscribers across all the various social media platforms. We've never received so much as a solicitor's letter for anything we've said or done. Well, I was arrested for a tweet a couple of months ago, but the DPP dropped that one fairly quickly.
We've got directions back from the DPP and they've directed no prosecution, so that should be myself and yourself's dealings finalised.
So, that's the latest. What do you all think? Do I have a case? Should I sue my local community radio station for defamation? Well, if you'd like to complain about this podcast or any of their very biased reporting, here is their email address. But if you really want to annoy them, why not get yourself a ticket for the very next Mise Éire event in Castlebar, taking place on Saturday, the 19th of September. It's going to be Ireland's biggest celebration of music, culture and crack. Really looking forward to seeing you all there.